Hello friends, welcome to World Affairs Today. Today we'll be discussing a major event happening in the United States tomorrow. Yes, America is set to vote for its next president, and the two main political parties each have their own symbols. One has the elephant and the other the donkey. In today's session, we'll talk about the story behind these symbols and also dive into how the American presidential election works. We'll cover various unique aspects of the election, why it takes place every 4 years, who the electors are, what primaries and caucuses mean, what swing states are, and who will win. We'll also explore whether the elections are direct or indirect, and much more. So let's get started with today's session, dear friends. Now, the U.S. presidential election for the year 2024 is happening tomorrow, on November 5, 2024. This date is actually the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. It's important to note this detail because if November 1st falls on a Tuesday, the election is not held on that day. Instead, it's held on the next Tuesday, which means U.S. elections will never happen on November 1st. Tomorrow's election has been in preparation for a long time, with two main candidates vying for the presidency. On one side, we have Kamala Harris, representing the Democratic Party, and on the other, former President Donald Trump from the Republican Party. Both parties are trying hard to convince voters. America, being a federal country, consists of 50 states, each with its own constitution and citizenship system. These states come together to form the Union of America, and each state has its own voting system to help elect the president. But before we dive into the voting, let's first discuss the electoral process. The first key term here is direct and indirect election. In a direct election, you directly vote for a candidate. For example, if you could directly cast your vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, that would be a direct election. However, if you elect someone who then votes on your behalf, that's an indirect election. In the U.S., it may seem like people are directly voting for Trump or Harris, especially with all the campaign coverage, but that's not the case. The U.S. has an indirect election system. Tomorrow, people won't actually see the names of Trump or Harris on their ballots. Instead, they'll be voting for the Electoral College representatives. The U.S. has 538 seats in the Electoral College, and a candidate needs at least 270 of these to win the presidency. People vote for electors, who in turn represent their choice of president. America also has a multi-party system, though it's dominated by two major parties, Republicans and Democrats. Although other parties exist, they typically don't gain as much media attention or public support. To summarize, tomorrow's vote will involve the selection of 538 electors. Depending on which set of electors wins, either Trump or Harris will become the president. After tomorrow's election, the results will be tallied, which can sometimes take weeks. By January 2025, the United States will have its next president. In the United States, the president is elected every 4 years for a fixed term, and preparations for this election typically begin nearly a year in advance. Essentially, this means that if the Democratic Party wants someone from their side to assume the presidency, they start planning well ahead. To simplify, let's consider the two main options here, Democrats and Republicans. From the Republican side, you can think of Donald Trump, while on the Democratic side, Kamala Harris might be an option. Each party has symbols associated with it. The Republicans are represented by an elephant and Democrats by a donkey. These symbols have become more like code words, as the Republicans are often identified by the elephant and the Democrats by the donkey. There's a history behind these symbols that we can discuss later. To select their presidential candidate, both parties conduct primaries and caucuses. What exactly are these? By January 2024, for example, each party had begun the process of deciding whom they would nominate for the presidency. In America, this process starts at the grassroots level, where discussions happen in each state, in smaller districts, and even municipalities. People gather to discuss whom they want to see as their party's presidential nominee, which initiates the lengthy process of narrowing down candidates. A caucus is a type of informal meeting where party members gather, discuss, and eventually choose one or two names as potential candidates. For example, within the Republican Party, there might be up to 50 contenders wanting to run for president. The party then sends these names out to its members, who gather to discuss and decide on a preferred candidate, leading up to the primaries. Primaries are a formal voting process organized at the state level, allowing registered party members to vote on which candidate they want to move forward. This process is similar to local elections, where people select representatives from their area who will later support a candidate at the national level. Over 4 to 5 months, primaries and caucuses take place across the country, allowing each party to decide on a candidate. Once the party makes a decision, it holds a national convention where representatives chosen through primaries and caucuses vote to finalize a single candidate as the party's nominee. For example, if the election is in November, the convention is often held around September. After this, the candidates from each party participate in debates, presenting their policies and vision to the public, which helps voters decide whom to support. But there's a twist. Americans don't vote directly for the president. Instead, they vote for members of the Electoral College. The U.S. has 538 electors in total, 435 from the House of Representatives and 100 from the Senate, with 3 additional electors from Washington, D.C. These electors form the Electoral College, which ultimately votes to elect the president. To win, a candidate needs at least 270 out of 538 electoral votes. This is not simply based on winning states, but also on population-based representation in the House, which influences the distribution of seats in the House of Representatives. In the United States, the largest states have the most seats, while the smallest states have the fewest seats. Some states even have only 1 seat in the Electoral College. For example, California has 53 seats in the House of Representatives. While the House term is only 2 years, what's important to understand here is that it's not about winning 25 out of 50 states to win the presidency. Instead, it's about winning the states with the most electoral votes. Whoever wins the states with the highest electoral votes will become the president. Now, there's another important aspect to understand here: the concept of swing states. Swing states are states where elections can sway toward any presidential candidate. In these states, it's unclear if they'll vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, as the margin is very slim. You might wonder, what difference does a margin of just a few percent make? Well, in the U.S. electoral system, there's a significant rule called winner takes all. So, what does winner takes all mean? In simple terms, if a candidate wins more than 50% of the votes in a state, all the state's electoral votes go to that candidate. For example, if a state has 20 electoral votes and one candidate wins by even a small margin, all 20 votes go to that candidate, regardless of the other votes. This rule gives certain states significant power in elections. Some states are predictable in their politics. They are traditionally Republican, red states, or Democrat, blue states. However, the swing states, often depicted in purple, can shift the outcome. If just one vote percentage changes, a state can swing from red to blue or vice versa. This system makes these states crucial for winning the presidency. Now, let's talk about the 2 main political parties in the U.S. and their symbols: the donkey for Democrats and the elephant for Republicans. These symbols have historical significance. The donkey for Democrats dates back to 1828 when Andrew Jackson was mocked as a jackass, donkey. Instead of being offended, Jackson embraced the symbol, using it on campaign posters. The image of the donkey became associated with the Democratic Party, and over time, they adopted it as a symbol. The elephant symbol for Republicans emerged around 1860. During Abraham Lincoln's time, newspapers began portraying him as an elephant, symbolizing strength. This imagery stuck, and Republicans embraced it as a symbol of their party. Some attribute this to the work of a cartoonist named Thomas Nast. In this way, the Democratic Party became symbolized by the donkey and the Republican Party by the elephant. The U.S. presidential election process, from primaries to the final election, is built around these 2 major parties. The chosen candidates from each party compete, and the winning president takes office on January 20, 2025. This entire electoral system, including the Electoral College and indirect election, plays a vital role in deciding the next U.S. president. In the 1870s, all the newspapers printed by Nast portrayed elephants and donkeys in a particular way. Showing elephants and donkeys was the cartoonist's idea, and it eventually became widely recognized. Since then, Trump's party, the Republicans, has been symbolized by an elephant, while the Democrats use a donkey. These symbols have become identifiers for each party. Another important point is related to the colors associated with each party. If you've noticed, the parties have their own designated colors. For instance, Republicans are represented by red, while Democrats are represented by blue. Does this color coding have any official significance, like how India's parties have specific colors, like saffron for BJP? In the U.S., it was actually media houses, not any election commission, that decided on these colors. Around the 2000 presidential election, when the competition was intense and TV broadcasts needed a clear way to show which states were leaning Republican or Democrat, media outlets decided to use red for Republicans and blue for Democrats. For swing states, purple was chosen. These color choices originated from the media to help viewers differentiate the parties visually on TV. Swing states, or winner-take-all states, play a crucial role because even a slight lead in these states can mean all electoral votes go to one candidate. This was key in Trump's win against Hillary Clinton in the previous election due to swing states. So, are swing states fixed? No, they vary by election, depending on pre-election surveys and opinion polls. If a state's public opinion seems split, it's considered a swing state. Therefore, not all states are swing states, and the list changes each election. For example, in past elections, some elections had as few as 2 swing states, while others had up to 22. In the current election, 7 key swing states could determine the winner. These include Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. The competition in these states is tight, with no party reaching a clear majority. In these 7 states, an intense focus on advertising is ongoing, with around 25 billion rupees already spent on print ads alone to win over voters in these areas. North Carolina, with 16 electoral votes, is also experiencing a close race, with Trump holding a slight lead over Kamala Harris but neither surpassing 50%. If neither candidate reaches 50%, the electors will be asked to decide again. In summary, these swing states will determine the future of the presidency. Swing states change with each election. There were only 5 in 2020, 6 in 2016, 2 in 2012, and so on, demonstrating how undecided voters often influence the final outcome. According to opinion polls, both parties currently show a marginal lead for their candidates, focusing on their respective states while relying heavily on the swing states to clinch the election. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this information helpful, please share it with others. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe.